charge of £45 when you want your express visas, and you pay £45. The ministry gets £7. So it is not true. It was blatant and palpable falsehood that this ministry, we don't sign agreements or contracts with revenue sharing. That as for us, we are, it's incredible. We are just here to be raped. It's here, United Kingdom, if you pay £45, ministry's share, £7. In Europe, if you pay €55, we get €7. United States of America, if you pay $55, we get $7. China, $55, $7. Other countries, $55, $7. It's here, the access contract. So what is this claim that Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when we sign contracts, because we are top-level diplomats, diplomats, we don't pay bills, we don't pay for utilities. Will ECG spare us that because we are in foreign relations, we are diplomats, so, and because we are signing unconscionable contracts, so don't bring us our light bills, don't bring us water bills. We will not pay our staff. Diplomats are not paid. All of this goes into our IGF. And Parliament has approved that the IGF that we generate, Ministry of Finance takes 66%, and then we take the rest. So, please, we will make copies of this agreement available. And next time you interview her, probably you should be doing the schooling of her. Yeah. She shouldn't be the one telling us that we need schooling. There is another contract here, the BTS contract. And because these are public contracts, I know some of you may raise privity of contract and why am I talking about contracts or rather, yeah, you know me, I stand for transparency. And once you come to enter into a contract with a public organization, citizens can file an RTI request, and these contracts must be made available under Ghanaian law. So the private companies watching and worried that I have brought all their contracts here, and maybe you don't want your wife to know how much you are making. I'm sorry. If you want to keep things private, then do only private transactions. Once you partner with the public, it's a transparent affair. The BTS, the passport PPP arrangement, is here, the revenue share. The ministry takes 40%, and then the private party 60%. It's here. BTS is a private party. So we're from this claim that our demand for revenue share, that you can't come and rape us like this and get away. No limit. You can charge anything. And you can operate in perpetuity. That we are not raising legitimate concerns. Meanwhile, if you look at these other contracts that I've talked about, the investment that these private parties have made, access, if you see you go to London and you see the investments they have made, the facilities they have constructed. The former president went to open it. And other investments they are making all over the world. And even they are not demanding 100%. They know that but for us, but for people applying through our system, how will you get clients to even look in your direction? The same with BTS. They are buying the printing equipment and all of that. We virtually doing all the investments. But we have a 40% share. If we say that we are no longer issuing chip embedded passports, where is your contract? So we are totally disgusted that Haji Alima will say that this ministry does not go into contracts that have revenue sharing arrangements. Now let's be clear. This whole arrangement breaches multiple laws of our country. We have gone through the records. There is no evidence that Haji Halima obtained approval of the Public Procurement Authority. We challenge her to provide proof that she followed the procurement laws of our country. We don't sign contracts under Ghanaian law like you are sharing granules to some well-wishers who you have met at the park. No evidence that the public procurement laws of our country were respected. We have also stated that if you pay regard to our websites across all our 71 nations, you notice that the advertised fees and charges are fees and charges approved by Parliament. Because we have the fees and charges law, which clearly spells out. So after you've gone to negotiate your contract, you sign your agreement, you must make sure it is factored within the fees and charges arrangement. That is why access is factored. BTS, it is factored in the fees and charges of our country. Fred Kwarteng and Haji Halima are above Parliament. They are above the fees and charges laws of our country. That is totally unacceptable. And that is why management decided that based on these flagrant violations, we are abrogating this contract because we think that this contract is even void ab initio. That is why we've abrogated it. We are not respecting the terms of this contract. And we have written to the gentleman. I do hope that IOCO will expedite work on these investigations and will bring the Ghanaian people justice. Justice must be served in this matter. I must also add that the ministry is investigating the terms under which Mr. Fred Kwarteng was engaged as a locally recruited staff. We have discovered very strangely that whereas his application letter was sometime in March 2017, he is holding an employment letter dated 12 December 2016. Fred Kwarteng probably is the first person in the world whose application for employment comes after he has been employed and after he has an employment letter. Really mysterious. And we are also investigating how come due diligence was not carried out. This is a gentleman who had no business being engaged because did not have the relevant legal status to even be recruited. And so if Haji Halima Muhammad is inviting us to reveal more about this and to put out more damning findings, we are left with no choice but to do that. We had reserved some of these details for the IOCO investigations. But since she wants this matter to play out fully in the glare of the public, we have no choice but to respond appropriately, because some of these details we are providing, we thought that IOCO can deal with them and put out their findings later. But she keeps inviting us with her very very dishonest, disingenuous media engagements. The final matter that I must respond to in this particular segment. Haji Halima has sought to question the figures that we have put out, saying that she doesn't know how the calculations were done. She should read the statement we submitted to Parliament. We pointed out clearly the traffic, the number of visa applications we receive every year. And we took out the share of FedEx and UPS in Fred Kwatin's charges. So the profit is clear. It is even a conservative analysis we have done of $4.8 million. And we stand by that figure. It's a very conservative estimate because it's not difficult. All we had to do was to find out from FedEx, UPS, how much the charge is. We know what Fred Kwatin was charging based on his own statements. And all you have to do is multiply that by the traffic. And we have the data which we can share with you. Because we know the people in our system. We have to account to auditors. So it is not difficult at all. You can do the analysis yourself. It is not difficult at all. So I do hope that these engagements have brought clarity to these matters. And the disingenuous statements, the falsehoods being peddled out there, you can help to throw light and bring sunshine. People want to obfuscate matters and make this issue complex. It is not complex at all. It's a very simple matter. The laws that have been breached, the clear diversions. And you see, they disingenuously make statements like, he hasn't taken any money from Ghana. Ghana hasn't lost any money. It is people who came to make payments to Mr. Kwatin. And then they ask, if they had made a payment to FedEx, to UPS, will we be concerned? First of all, how did he come by this contract? We have laws in this country. We have procurement laws. The naked conflict of interest. I mean, if we are going to be tolerating this, you work in an IT department, you work in this ministry, you see an opportunity, then you quickly go and register a company, then you come to me, then I sign a contract with you. Imagine the passport director sees an opportunity to do the courier services we are doing now. Then he goes to register his own company, then comes to us. And then we are paying him to work at the passport office, and at the same time, we have a contract with him where he's profiting. The point is clear. If this was done properly and had gone through a legal department, it would not have been signed by Haji Halima Mahama. This contract would not have been this unconscionable. We would have protected those who apply for visas. There will have been a clear pricing figure, and there will have been termination clauses. We will have built in this contract accountability measures. So I think that the matters have been well clarified, and I'm willing to take your questions at this point. But before we do that, let me also very quickly say that the ongoing institutional fumigation, as I call it, the overhauls, are going quite well. I have seen a number of videos. For example, this Jamaican video that went viral. If you listen to her carefully, She said she applied 6 weeks ago. We have just done the reforms 3 weeks ago. And so you can see that the mess we're talking about really accumulated over many years. People were only interested in making money, business, signing unconscionable contracts, and not letting the embassy work, and building systems, responding to calls, and ensuring that there is customer satisfaction. The new reforms we are putting in place seek to address all of these bottlenecks. And I want to urge the international community to be patient with us. We are putting in place measures to make sure that all of these matters, which are really legacy issues, which we have inherited, we are going to address them once and for all. And indeed, we are addressing them. We are putting in place new systems that will allow for multiple calls to be received at the same time. We are also making sure that our officers are trained and are more responsive, more courteous on the phones. And we are really overhauling the system, putting in place stronger internal control so that these things are not allowed to recur. We take the view that the reforms that we are outlining will improve our image and will lead to an enhanced image of the Foreign Service, which is a really reputable organization, as you do know, a very distinguished service of our country. And we should not allow a few bad nuts to really tarnish the image of the Foreign Service of the Republic of Ghana. So,
And thanks for staying with us here on the JoyNews channel. Then your pictures, the Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa addressing the press today on a wide range of issues, starting off with the passport regime and also touching on a likely U.S. ban. But the latest is also about the corruption scandal at Ghana's Washington Post. There you have him taking a number of questions of almost an hour of a brief on what's been happening at that post. Just last month, the minister himself went there and of course, announced subsequently the decision to close down our post in Washington, a reason for which, of course, we've been seeing a number of reactions, including what the former ambassador to the U.S., Hajia Alima Mahama, has said about that contract regime. It appears that the ministry insists that the contract of course, is genuine, but there are some individuals who are making or taking advantage of the system to the tune of some 4.8 million United States dollars. You had the minister there address all of these issues, and we'll be bringing you some updates subsequently on the JoyNews channel. And now to UPFront with me, Blessed Sogah. For those of you who've been watching the space for quite some time now, you do know that grafts, and just as you've seen the minister talk about it, and corruption continue to be martyrs that undermine Ghana's development and our efforts to grow. The country loses billions of cedis annually to embezzlement, fraud, and the misappropriation of public funds, despite having laws and institutions certified to fight some of these crimes. So what are we doing about it, and how can civil society, together with state agencies, work towards addressing all of that? I'll be telling you about the guests who are joining us now, but I want to first of all bring in Harrison Cudjoe, who is with the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, joining us via Zoom to give us a sense of why it is important to move towards the regime of asset recoveries and working in tandem with state institutions. So we'll be getting into the whole anti-corruption spectrum, looking at that regime of asset recovery for you shortly. But Harrison is joining us to shape the conversation for us. Harrison, thank you for spending some time with us here on UPFront. I want to start off by finding out from you how civil society's role is crucial, particularly looking at it from the angle of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition in fighting corruption. And we're limiting our scope now to asset recovery, which has not been on top of the agenda for quite some time now. Walk us through that journey and why you're concerned about this as the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition.
All right. Good evening, Blessed. The Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition has been involved in the advocacy, for strengthening anti-corruption laws in Ghana. And we have been around since 2001. We have made inputs into several anti-corruption legislation, including the right to information law that was passed. But we have seen that the anti-corruption terrain is changing, as in we are fast moving away from just prosecuting people who are engaged in acts of corruption and maybe jailing them and getting them to come back to return and enjoy the loot that they put away. So now we feel that we have to shift from that ground to a ground where we comprehensively deal with people who get involved in corruption by not only jailing them, but also recovering from them the assets that they have taken from us. And in this direction, we got funding support from the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering to undertake this exercise. First off, to bring the attention of Ghanaians to the whole issue of asset recovery, to let Ghanaians know that we have state agencies that are working on that issue regarding asset recovery, and then also to get these citizens to support the state agencies when they have to recover their assets. And so we are undertaking a project called Building Political Will and Public Support for Asset Recovery in Ghana. And thankfully, we have the Economic and Organized Crimes Office and the Financial Intelligence Center helping us in the various training sessions that we are doing, at least to let Ghanaians understand what the whole issue of asset recovery is about and how they go about asset recovery and how asset recovery could help us in the fight against corruption. So
and the question is about and the concern is about the timing, isn't it? Why are you running that now, and what's its relevance to the fight against corruption?
Like I said, the anti-corruption scene is fast changing because we are realizing that those who engage in corruption are also fast changing their methods. And one of the things that we have to do if we want to comprehensively fight against corruption was to look at recovering the assets from the people who are involved. So it's now, and it has to be now, because we have to respond to the changing landscape in the fight against corruption.
Corruption is indeed a canker, but of course there are anti-corruption agencies that should be helping in that fight, including civil society. And that's why I'm excited to be bringing in two individuals who are helping us with the discussion. Lawyer Leo Anthony Siama is head of legal and prosecution at YOCO, and Sam Henry also is deputy managing director at YOCO. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Yes, and of course, it's good to have all of you on. Mary Ada is with the Ghana Integrity Initiative, and she'll be joining us also with the perspective of civil society, just as you're doing, Bright. But I'm interested in hearing from these key agencies. So which of you would want to take the first bite? Maybe YOCO?
Why not?
Yeah, so let's start off with you, because very often, if it's not the Ghana Police Service, then you are the first to be in the news about issues relating to, proceeds of crime and all of these issues. But how do you help us understand, what it is that you do, and having the public also come to terms with your role?
Okay, so thank you for the platform. As usual, this represents an avenue for us to be able to educate the public, especially on the growing awareness when it comes to asset recovery. First of all, the Economic and Organized Crime Office was set up in 2010 with a clear mandate to monitor and investigate economic and organized crimes, and then on the authority of the Attorney General, prosecute these offenses, and then mainly to recover the proceeds of crime. So you look at the YOCO Act, Act 804 from 2010, the central theme across remains the recovery, or an emphasis on the recovery of the proceeds of crime. Now, we have moved from the approach to criminal investigation, where it was only important in the past, to only try and stop or arrest the perpetrator of a criminal offense and then let him go and serve his jail sentence. Now we are going or embarking on a drive to ensure that whatever proceeds from the criminal enterprise that has been gotten by these criminals should be taken from them. So briefly, that's what UCO does, and also falls down within our mandate, disseminate this information and then create a lot of public awareness.
But Sean, to be fair, we don't hear as much about the FIC as compared to UCO. Is it because of the approach you take, or simply because there's not been a lot of spotlight on your activities and what you do?
Okay, so first of all, good evening to your cherished viewers, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to the CEO of the Financial Intelligence Center, Mr. Kojo Chubuafo Albert. And he's coming with a lot of energy, and part of the reason why we're finding ourselves here. So I think that it's been a question of strategy and maybe who's in the helm of affairs, but one of our mandates to actually create a lot of public awareness. And I think that this is an opportune time. Maybe it should have been a bit early, but better late than never, I guess. So we're here.
And speaking about that, would you say that you have a clear difference in terms of what you do as opposed to that of UCO? Because when we hear of the anti-corruption agencies, we don't seem to have a clear distinction as to what your roles are and how uniquely you're all performing your duties.
Yeah, so there's a clear distinction on what we do and what UCO does, even though it's a bit of a mix of both. I think the only significant difference is that UCO has the mandate to prosecute, whereas the FIC does not do prosecution. But if you just give me a minute, maybe I'll talk about the setup of the Financial Intelligence Center. So you would recall post 9/11, and there was a global push effort towards addressing issues related to money laundering and terrorism financing and the financing of organized crime. And so that led to the fact that Ghana needed to make sure that it was able to achieve its obligations, international instruments. So the United Nations actions against transnational organized crime, United Nations actions against corruption, and then the Financial Action Task Force regulations. And so as a result of this push, there was a need for countries to be able to establish institutions aimed to address some of these things, hence the establishment of the Financial Intelligence Center to be able to meet our obligations under the international instruments.
Right. Now that you've all laid the foundation for me, there's a need for us to understand this because, yes, over the years, we get that curative approach towards, tackling issues of anti-corruption, but the aspect of asset recovery has been very low on the agenda. That's why I want to hear and bring in Mary Ada, who's always been with us, Executive Director for Transparency International Ghana, joining us via phone. And Mary, countless occasions that we've spoken about this, that Ghanaians really want recovery. We just don't want to see the case where you're prosecuting individuals. We want to see action, I guess, the recovery of state funds as well. How do you come in and what would you want to see, together as the civil society space, those working towards fighting corruption, for these agencies to do? Then we set the ball rolling.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you and to your viewers, and also to Leo and Sean, whom we work together very well on these subject matters. So, from the civil society, one of the things we have seen as a pivotal process to ensuring that push this agenda is the fact that they belong, and we are also catalysts in the issues around recovery, but also on the product of anti-corruption. And within this ecosystem, we believe that our contributions must be seen accessible. We believe that our contributions also span the entire accountability value chain, enterprise accountability value chain. We are talking about exposing corruption. We are talking about after corruption has been exposed. We are talking about investigating corruption, tracing of assets, and then when these assets which have been stolen are traced, then we then trigger the issues around the asset recovery. So if assets have been deemed to be stolen, then they must be recovered. And within that space, advocating role for legal policy reform and empowering citizens to understand what it is. This subject matter we are referring to is a critical one for us. And in that stage, you have seen that's why the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, through the support of GIABA, is doing this education to bring to attention the critical role of citizens and civil society, the media at large, to bring these issues of legal and policy advocacy to bear, but also our role as public educators very much enhanced, and then helping to monitor and gather information on assets that have been stolen as civil society, but following up with pressure and ensuring that the people who are working in the space of policy are engaging to ensure that they do the right thing. What the law says.
Let me close the chapter for both you and Harrison from the perspective of civil society. And I'm going to be very blunt here. Do you see the likes of Yoko and the FIC doing just that? Before I come back to them.
Certainly. It is a difficult task because corruption is a hidden activity. And in issues where you don't see, when people opacity reign, it's very difficult to be able to prosecute the agenda very successfully to 100%. Because in our current dispensation, there are a lot of gaps which we need to fill within that regime. With the OFP, I think some attempt was made to embed some of these asset recovery and other anti-corruption process very well. So the scheme of this, it will be how to say that people they are working 100% of the time. And we see also an intelligence collaboration that has been instituted by effect. We also see a lot of inadequate policy. And when there is inadequate policy, it also becomes a problem. And from the past minister evaluation report, you realize that there are no issues that need to be dealt with when it comes to of anti-declaration system, the political interference, and the lack of political will.
Okay, Mary. Right. Great points there. Harrison, you want to close the chapter on that by sharing your views with me as well as to what you think about these two agencies. Then I come back to them in studio.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you feel that Yoko and FIC are indeed up to the task and are, implementing that, the aspect about asset recovery then?
Yes, agencies, as we have them, have done and are still doing what they have been set up to do. I know that the FIC plays a lot more an intelligence role, gathering intelligence and sharing the intelligence with the responsible state agencies so that those agencies could pick up the issues. And I know that Yoko also has been doing a lot of work stopping people from enjoying what they call the proceeds of crime. So I think that the agencies have been doing their work. What is left is for some kind of political support. And by political support, I mean that the state should commit to, funding them, should commit to giving them the necessary technical and non-technical resource so that they are able to do their work as they ought to. And then also we need Ghanaians to get on the side of the law enforcement agencies so that we are better able to help them in the generation of intelligence, especially when we see things that are going wrong. We see where people have stashed items or where people have built houses, and we feel that these are tainted houses. We should be able to share the intelligence with them so that they can follow up, and then based on what they find, the necessary action is taken. So I think that Yoko and FIC are doing a good job. They have been with us on our training and sensitization trips all across Ghana, talking to CSO representatives talking to media persons in the various regional capitals about asset recovery. I think that they are doing a good job, and we only need to give them more support so that they are able to do more for us.
Okay.
Especially in this accountability.
Right. So Harrison agrees with me that a lot more work ought to be done. So let me start off from you, Leo. Convince the public right now that indeed you have a story to tell, and it's not too bad. Because very often when the public hear of Yoko, they feel, well, the cases will come up. You're not doing recoveries. So it's like a downward spiral. Nothing is moving forward then.
Well, one of the things in terms of our approach to asset recovery and the obstacles we face has to do with the public understanding exactly what we do at the Economic and Organized Crime Office.
Yeah.
Now, when we take up these investigative cases, we have to bear in mind that these are complex financial crimes. So you are taking very long period in trying to even follow money trails, establishing or trying to attribute the stolen loot to the perpetrator. You are also looking at analyzing volumes of material that we get in the course of investigations. And Sean will bear me witness here. There are times that you can get loads of bank statements from one individual, and it can take you up to a month in terms of you doing an analysis, trying to establish a trail in terms of where the money has gone. If the public understands that these kind of investigations are complex and takes a long time, that would ease a lot of the pressure on us in doing our work. Now, not only about even analysis, we are also talking about what we call the mutual legal assistance regime,
right,
where we depend on other countries outside Ghana for the purposes of facilitating asset tracing and tracking. Now, a normal MLA request, as we popularly call it in the investigative society, can take up to a year or two just to get a feedback back. So if you put all these together, you realize that there's a lot more that we can do, especially when it comes to the educational front, to create awareness for the public to understand.
But pardon me on that. Speaking about the mutual assistance program, and I don't know if that also falls within the FIC, the two of you might want to have your take on that. Is there a fair balance, really? Because when it's about the other side, and I'm talking about the other countries, they easily get access to information. Just recently, I believe there was an operation here in the country. The foreign minister was just talking about that. But we don't seem to have that ease if we want to get into their markets. Sean, you want to start from there?
So, yeah, I could. I would speak from an FIC point of view. And for us at the FIC, I think we enjoy a bit of leverage when it comes to international cooperation, because not only do we rely on the MLA, mutual legal assistance, but we also have other instruments that are available to us. So, for instance, when you talk about the Egmont platform, so it's a platform of basically about 176 FIUs or FICs that are on there. And what that does is it gives us the opportunity to be able to exchange information as and when required. So that kind of makes it a little easier, and it's very, very timely. It is so because of what the FIC is responsible for, which is identifying proceeds of money laundering and terrorism financing, as well as proliferations of weapons of mass destruction. So the nature of our work requires that when we need information, we should be able to get it in a very, very time. We also have MOUs that we've signed with other countries. Right. And so we also have other channels that we use. So whether it's the FBI, whether it's the NCA in Britain, we have all these relationships that we're able to leverage on in terms of information sharing.
Not to digress, but maybe you can spend a minute on that, on this US-specific raid that was done recently. How easy was it for you to track and assist in that process, for instance? Did you just simply go activating some platforms to track the people and to identify persons who were picked up?
So I will speak to the nature of our work without being so specific about on the details. So the nature of our work requires that as much as we work domestically with stakeholders, we are also obligated to work with international partners, because we have international obligations that we're supposed to adhere to. So, and that's why I specifically mentioned the FBI and then the NCA. Yes. So we work with them in terms of information.
So you do work with the FBI?
We work with all, and I'm going to read what our law says, and probably it would give viewers a better appreciation of the. So if you just give me like 30 seconds. When you look at the objects of the center, basically it's in 4 parts. So first one is the identification of proceeds of crime, and also combating money laundering, terrorism financing, tax evasion, and any other unlawful activity, as well as proliferations of weapons. And then we also make sure that we exchange information with competent authorities, law enforcement, tax authorities within. Then the fourth component is that we make same information available to other competent authorities outside of the jurisdiction. So yes, we work closely with all these law enforcement agencies outside of our jurisdiction.
Leo, have you been successful at bringing someone down for prosecution?
Yes, yes.
And I believe you know why I'm asking that question.
Yes, I know. You were talking about the issue of reciprocity in terms of... and yes, you see, one of the things that is very important when you look at the mutual legal assistance regime is that it must be reciprocal. So it's not, it's a wide, very, very wide misconception that it is only we that are always eager to help them. No, but it works both ways. When you look at the way the whole process works, they also react or give meaning to most of the requests that we make, especially when it comes to asset tracing and confiscation when it comes to properties that are outside the Ghanaian jurisdiction.
Let's talk about the problem in general and some unique hurdles that you're facing now in your operations. Mary was just talking about political interference, for instance, in your operations. How do you minimize that and its impact on your operations? Well,
one of the first things that I usually complain about when it comes to some of the challenges that we face has to do with a lack of a comprehensive asset recovery law. All the asset recovery, I think aside from the OSP that has something quite comprehensive, all the other organizations or agencies have to rely on snippets of the law in terms of how to provide a regime in terms of the management of assets when we receive them. Following on that makes it quite easy for us to be influenced in terms of the directions that we go when we are following investigative paths, because someone will come and tell you, you do not have the mandate to go on this tangent or recover. So that for me is a major challenge, and not necessarily the political will or political pressure not to go after the assets that we go after during investigations. Because
if you have dockets, a number of dockets before you, what would influence priority then? That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, you see, when there's no preference in terms of which docket you want to prosecute.
Yes.
Our focus is retrieving stolen assets or assets that ideally should belong to the state. So we do not have a focus in terms of this is more important than that. No. What we actually rather do is that it gives us a great incentive to go after more powerful people, because then it encourages or focuses more on the public trust that we are trying to build, as well as strengthening the rule of law, which means that nobody is above the law. So there's no preference in terms of dockets when we are doing or conducting.
The perception is that the OSP, YOCO, FIC, you are becoming a drain on the public purse because you're not bringing in as much as we're giving to you as, taxpayers. Do you have a success story to share? And I see Sean is also smiling about that. I'll come to you shortly. Let me say again, do you have a success story to share with the public on how you are recovering more?
Yes. And again, I think this is one of the things that for law enforcement agencies we are not particularly good at, telling the public what exactly we do. So for instance, in 2023, YOCO was able to recover a total amount of about 308 million Ghana cedis.
Really?
In 2024, that figure was about 199, almost 200 million Ghana cedis. So these are some of the things that we do in terms of recovery.
Are you sure about these figures?
Yes, these are figures from our finance directory.
Right.
So again, I think it has to do with our inability to properly communicate some of these things. And again, to pick a cue from the recent happenings in terms of the landscape where you have the Attorney General address the nation and give updates, I think this is the way to go. We are accountable to the Ghanaian people. So as and when we recover any amount of money or whatever assets that we go after, we should make it known to the Ghanaian public so that it builds the trust in the institutions that are tasked with asset recovery and investigations in general.
Sean, tell me, what will be your story then?
It's interesting that that was said. I want to believe that cannot be said about the FIC, given what we do. Ghana finds itself in the position it does, i.e., we're not on a grey or black list because of the efforts that the FIC is doing, and that That alone.
Until very recently.
that should tell you the enormity of the task that lies ahead. You see, we're dealing with individuals that are very organized, that have a very bad mind to commit crime. And they are well-resourced. And to be honest, we are under-resourced in what we do. But even given the little resource that we have, there's a lot that we do to keep this country safe. And like I said, FIC is at a pivotal place where we link up with all accountable institutions, competent authorities, law enforcement. So we literally begin the process in terms of the receipt of the suspicious transaction reports, where we conduct our analysis to be able to determine an actionable intelligence. And that actionable intelligence is passed on to the relevant law enforcement agency to continue with it. And that process is that solid. So whatever success story Yoko has to say, whatever success story the OSP has to say, the Ghana
Police, like that pivot.
We're that pivot at the bottom of it, and we make sure.
Okay, but how then do you spot and flag some of these transactions? What would you say is common in our case as Ghana, I mean, in the context of recovery then?
So the FIC works in conjunction, like I said, with competent authorities and accountable institutions and regulatory bodies. So for instance, the Bank of Ghana, and the Bank of Ghana has institutions that it regulates, i.e. the banks. And so all these accountable institutions are trained on how to spot suspicious transactions. And once they do that, then they have an obligation, a legal and moral obligation, to make sure that they send all those suspicious transactions to the Financial Intelligence Center, and then we can also begin our work. We also can make requests when we have reasonable suspicion that something doesn't feel right. We can make a request on any accountable institutions, and they are obliged by law to provide us with all that information to be able to enable us do our comprehensive analysis and come up with a good product that we can disseminate to the appropriate law enforcement.
What's, in percentage terms, the level of hemorrhage happening within our space? Are you able to put some figures to it to know, well, we are recovering this much, but we're losing this much? Are you able to put figures on it then?
Not from the top of my head, but we do have a records of some of these, and I think that is under the LECOP, the Law Enforcement Coordinating Bureau. I think they make submissions of cases under investigation, cases that have been prosecuted, successful prosecution, and any recoveries, if any, made. I think that statistic is available. Maybe if I showed you that, you may not be too impressed, but if I talk to you about the challenges that we face, you would realize that that number is quite a good number. We need that also because, like I indicated earlier on, we have international obligations to meet. And so currently Ghana will be undergoing its third round of mutual evaluation. What that basically means in simple terms is we will be subjected to ascertain whether there are any deficiencies in our AML-CFT regime. And if there are deficiencies and we are not addressing them, that could send us back into a grey list or a blacklist, and that would not be good.
I recall with so much sadness when the former foreign minister, Shirley Botchwey, was making attempts to convince our European counterparts on taking us off the list. I must confess, it's not an easy job to do. Do you fear that where we stand now, we may go back, or you're working as much to prevent that?
No way I can sit here and say I fear. But no, I don't, because there's a lot of efforts that are being put in, and the new leadership. I mean, we realize the magnitude of what lies ahead, and we know the impact of what going into a grey or blacklist would be, and also given our position within the sub-region, I mean, we understand what the job is about, and we're adequately prepared, and we're putting. But we cannot do this on our own, and that's why we require all stakeholders to come on board. Sometimes when people hear about this, they think it's just a job of the FIC. No, our job is to ensure that we coordinate this. But it requires your good sales, it requires the CSOs, it requires everybody, the banks, the DNFBPs, and all these other stakeholders to come on board for us to be able to achieve this objective.
Leo, talk to me about, personalities and how sometimes you then face challenges in dealing with some of them. Because if I'm a high-ranking official, a state official then, involved in this organized crime, and you still want to recover, I bet you may be looking at your job and considering that first and foremost before you do any other recovery?
Well, you see, again, YOCO was set up as a specialized agency. One of the meanings of that is that most of our employees are professionals in their various capacities. So that is at the forefront of whatever we do. Yeah, however...
Is that not just on paper?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. That, for instance, as a lawyer, when I'm doing my investigation or conducting my investigations within the legal parameters, I know these are things that I can defend in court, so I do not have a problem. However, if you look at the other social sites in terms of the recent picketing in front of our offices and other stuff like that, those are, well, mere distractions that I do not think will have any significant impact on the investigations that we conduct. At the end of the day, anyone that is brought before us must be subjected to the same mechanisms that are available to the ordinary man. Again, it's about the rule of law.
I've heard this from Martin Amidu. I've heard this from the current special prosecutor. Say, if you fight corruption, corruption will come fighting back. Are you saying that you're still confident and you just go ahead with your work regardless of, personalities involved?
Definitely. It doesn't matter who the personality is. The idea is that if you make an example of that idea of a powerful person, then it's easier for you to conduct your work when it comes to an easier target. So for us, it's about being professional, staying within the rigors of the law, because once the law backs you, there's nothing else that can detract you from what you are doing.
What we all equally want to see is the involvement of the public and perhaps civil society. Yes. What key expectations do you have of them, the public and CSO?
Well, exactly. One of the things I expect the public is take advantage of the numerous laws that we have in existence. For instance, there's the Whistleblowers Act that even offers a reward of up to 10% for any valuable information that a person gives to law enforcement agency that leads to recoveries.
But break that down, because if I walk into your office and I talk to you about someone who may be involved in some underhand dealings, are you not going to take that, make the commission, make the gain, and leave out the public then?
No. Once you come
do you document it? What do you do then?
We do. So the Whistleblowers Act gives you a regime where you have protocols in terms of how you approach investigations when a person comes under it. Yeah. Anonymity is one of the key things that comes under it. The idea that the person, not the idea, the fact that the person is entitled to 10%. So if we conduct any investigations as a result of someone's volunteering of information to us for the purposes of that investigation, which leads to asset recovery, if we fail or refuse, the person has a legal basis for which to sue us in court. So we cannot just take information from them and then go on that tangent and say we cannot pay. It's just not possible. Secondly, there's also the Witness Protection Act that was passed a couple of years ago, and that also ensures that we can disguise you, we can relocate you, we can do all the things that...
I want to be relocated, first of all.
then you should contribute something valuable to us that leads to asset recovery.
Yeah.
And then there's also the Right to Information Act, which allows the public, the public to keep us on our toes in terms of the requests that they make concerning the investigations that we may be doing. Yes, once in a while, we will not be able to give you feedback in terms of active investigations, especially when we realize that giving you that information may compromise our investigation. But aside from that, there are lots of other avenues that the public can do, especially in helping us take on this fight. Monitoring of even our environment or our general space is also another one, because then at the end of the day, the people that live with these people that perpetrate the crimes are the ones that first see the changes in lifestyle, all these other things that would first of all come to their attention before volunteering that information to us. So we urge the general public to keep their eyes wide open, keep volunteering the information. I believe all these agencies have contact points available where you can contact us at any point in time for the purposes of investigations and particularly asset recovery.
I see. Sean, have you ever had that experience of people walking up to you willingly just to volunteer information?
Yes, I have. I mean, especially when we've had engagements, people have actually walked up to us. As recent as about, I think, 2 weeks ago, somebody walked up to us and provided us information. So we actually gave them an email to send that to. Now, talking about sending information, so like I indicated earlier on, accountable institutions are obligated to send us suspicious transaction reports, as well as the general public. The only difference is that with the accountable institutions, there's a secure channel through which
that can be triggered.
That is used. It's called the GoML because of its secure nature, and it makes things seamless and easier. But yes, you can actually send us suspicious transaction reports or activity reports to our office. You can use our website as well, and you can also call in, and then we'll take it.
We'll be wrapping up shortly. Your final words on how you plan to work with the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, because this is a coalition of CSOs now coming up, working just to ensure that, they ease the burden on you. Do you have any future plans on what you intend to do with the public and CSO in mind?
To be honest, and I think that should be the position of any government agency, that to consider the general public as your most important stakeholder, because they're the reasons why we're in the job that we're in. Of course, we consider the CSO as a very important partner, and I think that our version of the FATF, which is JABA, also considers the CSOs as because of the reach and the advocacy that they can do on our behalf. Like you always, resources are not enough, so it's very difficult for us to reach a wider coverage. So once we have a stakeholder that we feel has the magnitude or the ability to be able to reach a larger audience, it's in our own interest to work very closely with them. So yes, we do consider the CSOs. I mean, they have been our very important stakeholder in the past, present, and they will continue to be in the future as well. Yes.
Leo, any parting words?
I believe Sean has said everything. At the end of the day, one institution cannot do it all. Law enforcement cannot do it all. It has to take a concerted effort of all of us, civil society as well as the media, especially on very fair reportage and not over sensationalized issues.
You're whipping us a little before we go.
Yes,
I see.
Yes, quite important, because at the end of the day, we realize that these are some of the things that distract or slow down investigations, because you now have to be called in answering things that will divert the attention of the investigations instead of focusing on the asset recovery. So it is very important that we all come on board and ensure that anyone that has the opportunity and takes anything that belongs to the Ghanaian public is brought to book.
Well, gentlemen, we have to go, unfortunately, but I believe certainly that recovery is the way to go. Grateful to you, Leo.
Can I just have one last word?
Yes.
Yeah. So 30 seconds. It's important to make mention of some of the people that are helping in the fight that you don't often get mention of. And if you allow me just 10 seconds, I think that it's important to acknowledge the work that institutions like SHRAJ, under Mr. Joseph Whittle, and then institutions like Parliament, under the speakership of Honorable Abin Bagbin, they are doing, as well as Iyoko. And I think that, like he said, we don't talk about success stories much, but there's a lot that are going on, even under the current leadership of Mr. Albert Kojo-Chumbuafo. A lot is going on behind the scenes, and I think that maybe moving forward, we need to put ourselves out there more for the general public to see the work that we're doing.
Grateful to you, gentlemen, and also to Mary Ada, who joined us earlier on, Executive Director for Transparency International Ghana, and also Harrison, who's here with us. Grateful to you all for joining us on UPFront. I am Blessed Sogah. Until then, log on to myjoyonline.com. We have lots of stories there for you. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.